So first of all, well, welcome again here. My warm thanks to Emil, Adrian, Daria, and all the team on Syncom for actually having me here. It's really a pleasure to be back in Singapore. I love this city. The food is amazing. The weather is amazing. I come from Brussels, the headquarters of NATO. It rains all the time. Here it rains, but it's warm and sunny. So it's really a real pleasure to be here. I know last year you had somebody speaking as a keynote from the United Nations. So I'm very happy that actually this year I could be here to represent NATO, which is actually another organization, and I will tell a bit more about this today. But first, allow me to ask you one question. How many of you know about NATO before today? If you can raise your hand. Okay, that's a good number, but not many. Okay, so very happy because I can tell you a bit more. I'm not an expert myself on cybersecurity, so actually I really look forward to these 2 days to explain to you what I know about my organization, but also to learn from you very much about cyber defense together. But before, let's see if this works, what I will do today basically is try to tell you a bit why in the first place NATO exists, what we do, and then focus a bit on our cyber defense policy. And Edward mentioned a bit already the knock shield, so very good that I will link a bit more on that. But first to start, I think also very important for me is to make a step back and see actually why in the first place NATO was created. And actually it looks from the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War, we realized actually Europe was destroyed. So it's a very moment when we decided, we understood that there's a few pictures from Poland, from Netherlands, France and Germany, they were destroyed. So we realized that the only way to actually ensure peace and stability was actually by enhancing cooperation. We have more than between 35 million and 60 million dead in the Second World War, mainly in Europe. So only through cooperation we could ensure peace and stability. That's why after the Second World War, many organizations were created. We had last year, you mentioned, you had here the United Nations was created in 45, World Bank in 44, NATO in 49, the European institutions in the 50s. So the idea was understanding that everybody agreed around the world, the big powers, France, Germany, US, China, Russia, that only through cooperation we can be safe and we can avoid another war. So actually that's the basis of why NATO was created. And I'd like to mention that, again, to connect what you did last year with the presence of the UN colleague, that our organization is established on the principles of the UN Charter. So actually this is the preamble of our NATO treaty, actually really hint to the connection to the UN and the principle of our work, which is exactly safeguarding freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, because we want to ensure peace. And how do we do that at NATO? We do that through collective defense. And I will come to this more in a minute. So our alliance, very important, is a defensive alliance. So we are not attacking any country, we are a defensive alliance, and we are a political military alliance. So this means that our leadership is a political leadership. Our heads of state, our heads of government, they meet on a yearly basis, at least in a summit. We will have one summit actually in June in The Hague. And then we have meetings regularly at ministerial level, Minister of Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we discuss all topics, including cyber defense. The objective, again, is deterrence. So the objective of the alliance is be strong enough so that nobody would dare to attack us, being a state or non-state actors, to keep peace. So deterrence through peace is our motto, is the way we work. And no decisions are taken by consensus. So all allies have to agree. Only the countries that are in the North Atlantic space, and meaning Europe and the US, can be, and Canada of course, can be a member of the alliance. We have partners across the globe that participate in different activities. Was mentioned, for instance, Lock Shield as an exercise. But only the countries in Europe and North America can become allies, can become members. All the others are partners not connected by Article 5 of collective deterrence and defense. Now, one key point before moving to the cybersecurity aspect, I think is very important, is the core of our work is based on Article 5. As I mentioned, that's basically the principle of solidarity, according to which if one ally is attacked, all allies would come and support. So that's basically principle of solidarity, like among friends. If one is attacked, all would come and support. And that's the core of our work. Now, of course, as you can imagine, 76 years ago, things were very different in the defense and security space, right? Back then, we had three main domains of work. So we had to ensure security on the land, on the air, at sea. That was the three main domains. But then with time passing, we had to add new domains. So we had the space domain and the cyber domain. So that's very important for today's work. And also, we have new challenges. So back then, the alliance was created to ensure safety against the possible aggression from the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia came to the fore, and Russia was integrated in the cooperation with NATO. So we actually had the NATO-Russia Council, and we were discussing all the topic of security with Russia. Russia was at the table with us. Up until their aggression of Ukraine in 2022, we had the NATO-Russia Council. And we would discuss all topics of cooperation and security to ensure, indeed, peace and stability in our space. After Russia attacked Ukraine, this stopped, of course. And Russia became, again, in this case, not Soviet Union, but now Russia, the main threat for our allies. And actually also perpetrator of several cyber attacks, and I'll come to that in a minute. Other aspect, of course, that are key challenges for the alliance is indeed terrorism. Terrorism is an asymmetric threat for the alliance. Terrorists also use cyber attacks, also other groups, not only terrorists, but this is an area that we work a lot. And other challenges include cybersecurity, for instance, but climate security, hybrid threats that we all work together on with the allies at 32. Now, the last element I think important to flag on our overall policy, we have three main legs of work. Deterrence and defense, that I mentioned before, Article 5. When ally is attacked, we all defend. Crisis response and management. If there is an earthquake, if there is COVID, we can support one another in crisis response and management activities. And then cooperative security. Cooperative security is for all the areas where there are global challenges and require cooperation globally. And this, I will come to this at the end of the chart. Now, focusing on cyber. So clearly, cyber, as you know better than I do, and also Edward mentioned, is something which is affecting everybody. Cyber attacks are affecting everybody. Ourselves as citizens, our government, our hospitals, our banks. Here I have just a few articles showing, for instance, how Russian or Chinese or Iranian attacks have been affecting our countries, but there are hundreds on a monthly basis. Sometimes difficult to attribute, but whenever we can, we attribute them to increase the cost of this to the attackers. But basically, the understanding from us in alliance, you think whatever we do is an alliance of 32. So 32 countries, 32 governments, 32 set of citizens and constituency that we have to work together. So we realized that the fact that we work together more in the information space, also to communicate among one another, and the reliance on communication infrastructure made us more liable to possible attacks from our competitors. And so this already 26 years ago, we have the first concept that mentioned strategic concept, which are our policy priority, which mentioned somehow cyber security, flagged that. So we became aware that the communication infrastructure could be targeted by our adversary. And then we get just fast forward to the concept of a couple of years ago, where we understood in our analysis that basically cyberspace is contested at all time. So there is no really peace in the cyberspace, right? I think this is something that you can relate to. There's no really peace in cyberspace because we, differently from the other domains, and I mentioned the land, air, and sea, there you see when there is a conflict. You can see if there is somebody attacking you at the border. In cyberspace, there's always a contestation. And the objective can be of various. Edward mentioned, for instance, can be getting data from you, can be a scam, can be denied service to make impossible to provide the service, for instance, can be public service, can be critical infrastructure. And this, of course, can have an impact on the defense. Because imagine having a critical cyber attack when then you are being attacked militarily by a country, by an adversary. So the possible impact of cyber attack can be destructive. So we have to be prepared for that. So NATO as a defensive military political alliance, we have to include this new domain in our overall policy. And we've done this through different key steps, which I'm mentioning here because I think can be maybe useful also for you to think how we went through this process and maybe also refer to your own experience in your own countries. But basically, the key moment for us was at the Wales Summit in 2014, when indeed we realized that at the end of the day, a cyber attack can be as destructive as an actual attack. Because you can deny service and can kill people. If your hospital not working anymore, if your critical infrastructure are not operating anymore, this can have casualties. So the sense that was, okay, then this means that if a country is attacked through a cyber attack, then other countries in the alliance should be able to support this country. So basically, we extended the Article 5 from the 4 domains I mentioned before, air, space, land, and sea, to the cyberspace. So now, if a country of the alliance, only the 32 countries of the alliance, not the partners, the 32 countries of the alliance are attacked by a cyber attack, then the country which is attacked can ask for support to the alliance, and all the allies would support. So that's a very important principle of solidarity, which is extended now to the cyberspace, not only to the physical space. And second key moment was in Warsaw, when after we understood that actually the critical infrastructure of a cyber attack could lead to disruptive effect, then we had to work a bit to make these capabilities to be resilient stronger. And basically the result was the definition that indeed the cyberspace becomes a domain together with the other 4. So the formal domain of cyberspace is included in our operation, and therefore we have a new operation center for the cyberspace, which allows the cooperation across all the NATO enterprise, so that we can be really able to operate in case of cyber attack. And then, of course, we are a political organization, so we have a policy now. So 2021, so quite recent, we have a policy, and I will mention a few key points after, and maybe over the days, today, tomorrow, we can discuss also about what you think is missing in our current approach. I would be interested to have your perspective from practitioners in society. But the policy is a comprehensive policy in our perspective on how we should address cybersecurity, and led last year, so very recent last year, to the creation of a new body, which is now coordinating the whole work of NATO enterprise and NATO allies. So again, you have to think we're a kind of multi-layer structure because we have international organization with nation state with their own structure. So now we have a body which allows us in integrated manner to coordinate the work in cyber defense, cyber security at NATO enterprise level in the quarters, but then also all the countries in their own infrastructure, in their own ministries. So that's a very complex exercise, but I think providing a good value. So this very quickly to mention the key points of a policy, which I think is it's useful. Basically, in one word, it summarizes the key elements I just mentioned up until now, so the 25 years of evolution. We have, first of all, the understanding that the space in the cyberspace is always contested. So we have to be able to deter and to be resilient to these attacks. We try, as an international organization based on the rule of law, to ensure that the cyberspace also is based on rules. And that's very complicated. This requires, of course, that we are able to call out an attack and possibly attribute an attack. But this, as you know, is very complicated sometimes. But this is our ambition as a political organization. Military level, as I mentioned before, the idea is that now we are aware that the cumulative effect on a cyber attack can lead to a collective action, so Article 5, and cyberspace as a full domain for NATO operation. And then, of course, it led to the third kind of part of the cake, which is the connection between political, technical, and military, which is ensuring that we, as an organization, are able to protect our critical infrastructure, not only the main infrastructure, but also those that we need for our mission and operations. And we develop partnership with industry to ensure our resilience and being able always to be at the top notch of technology, because this is essential to be able to outpace our competitors. Now, in concrete terms, you may say, but actually what exactly you do, organization, okay, you do all these policies, you have these structures, but in concrete, how do you help your 32 allies? And basically, we have three main ways to help our allies, so 32 allies. Because at the end of the day, we are very integrated through this structure. We have 32 allies, but we work together in our infrastructure for security and defense. And our strength is as strong as the weakest link. So it's essential that all of us are equally strong, equally well prepared. And that's why the first level of support is actually, again, political level. So we ensure that we all together at 32 allies, we invest as much as necessary to ensure that we have the capacities to defend. And this basically is through the defense plans. The defense planning process follows different domains, and then of course now also the cyber domain. And specifically we have a cyber defense pledge, which actually is open also to partner countries, and I will come to this later, where we analyze how better we can be resilient. And also we have some analysis framework which can be used by partners to assess their own capacities. And so this is something which we use to facilitate our leveling up to the top, the standards that we have. Also, as I mentioned before, rule-based system. We try to strive for a system which is based on rules and transparency, as was mentioned also before. So it's something that we really try to do that by attributing when there is an actual attack, when possible, and by fostering partnership with that. Here, a couple of articles to show examples when we were able to attribute attacks. Of course, attacks, they come from the usual suspect. You think the Republic of China, Russia, Iran. Here we have an example, for instance, when specifically Russia attacked Czech Republic and Germany, but there are many others. In this case, both the European Union and NATO, we attributed the attacks to Russia, so that was very clear. I put also an article up there from when Albania, a couple of years ago, was attacked by Iran and considered triggering Article 5, so as I mentioned before, the collective defense article. So this really in concrete terms, the political work. Now, military level, because you remember always we are a political military organization, so we always have two legs of the organization. So the military side is the integration of the cyber dimension in the defense planning. So this means that, for instance, even whenever we have a crisis management exercise or exercises which are not purely on cybersecurity, we actually add the cybersecurity dimension because we are aware that any crisis can include also a cyber security aggravating element. So we add that. And then the key element of work, of course, is the interoperability. So we ensure that through the military coordination, the capacities of our allies are interoperable. NATO is a defensive alliance, as I mentioned, so we don't have offensive military capacities in the field of defense, of the field of cyber. So we don't have offensive cyber capacities, but our allies have. So what we do is we coordinate with the allies in case there is a need and they have some activities in that field. And finally, the third level of support that we provide to the allies is the technical level. So the idea is, first of all, protect the infrastructure. That's something that we do, of course, on a daily basis, and I will show in a slide also the ecosystem, how that works. We manage all the incidents. We have specific bodies doing that. And we integrate the new technologies. Through the technical level, we push up and we incentivize allies to use the highest level technologies to ensure the resilience of our networks. Very important aspect is also the sharing of good practices and exercises. And actually, so this I connect again with what Edward was mentioning, is the exercises. So I think the best exercise that we have, I think, in the world, and I hope I don't fit with the hollowing thing of the previous, but I think we're proud of this log sheet exercise. This is an exercise which is the biggest exercise on cyber defense in the world. So we had 4,000 participants last year, more than 40 nations, as was mentioned, 18 teams. This is an exercise which is a blue team, red team exercise. So there are challenges, live fire exercises, which are on cyber defense, of course. And the objective really is to enhance the collective resilience of all the ecosystem, all the stakeholders in the field of cyber defense. And basically, this again, the objective is ensuring that by being all better prepared, we are all more resilient together because our infrastructure, our exchanges, our interests are so much interconnected. So if you are stronger, we are stronger. That's why the partnership is important, and this exercise is organized by the Cooperative Center of Excellence for Cyber Defense and is open to everybody, all the partners that are willing to participate. Then we have another exercise, which is this mainly NATO enterprise, so it means mainly NATO allies and some selected partners, so the European Union, for instance. This is a cooperative exercise, the cyber coalition. So basically, this is for us to test how well we are operating together, because indeed our infrastructure, it's 32 countries, already quite complex by itself, And it's essential that we are able to work together on different layers. Also, you can think, different countries have different competence at different level. So there are federal countries, there are more centralized countries, so we have to be able to work together in a very effective manner, and this exercise helps us to see if there is any gap, if there is any improvement that needs to be done. And this, as I mentioned, is a cooperative exercise, so everybody works together to tackle the challenges. And this is a slide I put together just to give you a sense, again, of the complexity, but the challenge also that we have to work together as an alliance with our infrastructure and with our allies. I will not go into details of this, but just to flag that we have an organization, a structure internally that manages all the network, and then we have different organizations and entities that help tackling different aspects of the issue. So for instance, when the cyber attack is detected, then it's passed to an operational center, and then the operational center will decide whether we deploy, because we have some rapid response team that we can deploy to countries to support countries that may not have the same capacities, because we have 32 allies that goes from the US, Germany, but also to smaller countries. And so you may not have all the same capacities to tackle these cyber defense risks. So the element of solidarity is also being able to help those. And so we do that through the cyber reaction teams. And also we have some virtual cyber incident support mechanisms that can be provided. So quite a diversified approach. And then we have a coordinating element I mentioned before, this new organization, the Integrated Center of Defense, which was created last year and helped to coordinate the work at NATO Enterprise and all the allies. And now, closing a couple of slides more on one of the partners and looking forward. I think partners, we mentioned before how important it is working together because these challenges are global. There are no borders, so it's important to work with partners. We have 32 partners, 32 allies, and 35 partners. The partners are not connected to Article 5. They're not bound to the principle of collective defense. So very important, no country which is not in Europe and North America can become a member of the alliance. So whenever you hear sometimes, NATO is expanding, no, NATO is not expanding. We cannot expand by treaty, we cannot expand. We have partnership, which are on a mutually interest basis, which is a contract of cooperation that we have with certain partners across the globe. As I mentioned, 35. 4 partners in Indo-Pacific. These are my partners which I work on a daily basis, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand. These are the partners with whom we have a stronger cooperation also in the field of cyber defense because we share lots of interest and lots of technology, so it's something we do a lot. But the partnership on cyber defense actually can be open to more countries, so that's why I mentioned the Cyber Pledge. Cyber Pledge is something which is open to many more countries, so actually 18 NATO partners countries participated last year in the NATO Pledge, which is a way for partner countries to come and discuss more together about possible cooperation in the field of cyber defense. And this is open to more than just the 4 Indo-Pacific partners. We have a Cyber Champion Summit, which is again to discuss about cyber cooperation with the Indo-Pacific. Again, this mainly had until now the IP4, but could also expand further. IP4, again, as I mentioned, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand. But it's a forum to discuss challenges. And also aspects which are interesting for many more countries in the region. For instance, the critical infrastructure was a key topic of last year. And then, as I mentioned, the partnership with industry, that's essential. Because we are an organization, international organization, but at the end of the day, you are the one who are in the front line on a daily basis, developing technologies, building resilient systems, civil society, assessing, checking how the system is actually working and is safe. So we work a lot, and we try to work more with organizations in civil society and businesses with different formats. And we also have an accelerator program specifically for dual use and including one element of cyber defense, which was included last year on quantum and post-quantum cryptography. So again, connected to cybersecurity. Now, to conclude, I think we are in a situation where the situation, as I mentioned, the system is increasingly contested. The information system is very contested. And especially in Europe, we have a war in the conflict, a war in a continent currently because Russia has as you know, attacked Ukraine in 2022. And we had to take lessons also from this because we realized that even civilian infrastructures, including in cyberspace, can be targeted by cyber attacks. And so we have to increase the resilience also of civilian infrastructure, because at the end of the day, civilian infrastructure, they become a dual use, and they can be used both for civilian purposes and military purposes in case of crisis. So this is one element that we learned, and we now stress our attention on. And the preemptive measure. So we have to be able to think more about what we can do to preempt possible attacks and build more resilient system also in-house and with our countries. And this requires, once again, a cooperation with industry, because industry, we realize, even in conflict, is essential to keep up the level of resilience and defense. So actually, it's really a cooperation which doesn't start or doesn't end at the moment the conflict starts. Actually, when the conflict starts, we realize it's even more important for ensuring the resilience. And finally, is about increasing the cost to those who perpetrate the attacks. So we have to acknowledge that there is indeed such a high number of cyber attacks, because maybe the deterrence that our countries, so our NATO, but globally, are not able to put up a barrier which is deterring enough cyber attacks. That's why there are so many cyber attacks. So how can we do that is something we have to think. How can we increase the cost together to avoid having so many cyber attacks and then build more resilience? On our end, as an organization, what we try to do is to increase the connection again between the political, technical, and military aspect, so that we ensure that our infrastructure are resilient enough. And again, that's what we try to do. We will have a new summit again end of the month in June. So certainly cyber defense and industry cooperation will be, again, one of the points to be discussed. So I hope this was interesting for you. This was the intention to explain a bit what our point of view of how NATO thinks about cyber defense and cyber security. I look forward to the conversation for the next couple of days to see if you have also suggestions on how we could do more and better. Thank you very much.